I'm really excited to bring you this video because we're going to go over the grip on your two-handed backhand. And you know, when we talk about the two-handed backhand and the grip that you're going to use, there's actually a lot of flexibility. And what I mean by that is there is some wiggle room, especially with your bottom hand. So ideally, I want you to be in a continental grip. And this continental grip is going to have your index finger knuckle on one bevel over from the top. So that's your ideal bottom hand grip. And then when you put your top hand on, you're going to be holding what I would call an Eastern forehand grip. So that's our starting point. But just know that if you want to slide your bottom hand a little bit more towards the forehand, you can. There's players on the tour that do that. And if you want to slide your hand a little bit more towards the backhand, where this knuckle is closer to being on top of the racket, you can do that as well. Keep in mind that depending on what grip you use, that will actually determine what your swing path is going to look like. So if you have a continental grip, it's going to be easier to swing low to high, okay? If you have a weaker forehand, I should say more of an Eastern forehand with the bottom hand, that's where you're going to start to use more of your top hand when you swing, and the swing path is going to go more across the body, and that's where you're going to feel a little more of a flip with your two-handed backhand. That's not exactly what I recommend because most of you out there do have a weak grip with your bottom hand, and I would like to get that grip more on the top when you're doing that, more in a continental grip, okay? That's the ideal. But just know that you can make it work if your bottom hand is a little bit weaker towards the forehand side. Now, as soon as you start moving that grip behind the racket towards the backhand, where the knuckle is more on top of the racket, I call this the Jim Courier grip, then you're definitely going to be swinging a lot more low to high when you swing, and you'll be using more of that bottom hand when you play. So as I said in the beginning of this video, there's a lot of flexibility. Now, a couple things that I want to point out, going deeper into this concept with the grip, is that when you hold the racket, I want you to make sure that you have your index finger spread on both hands. Ideally, this is going to give you more feel. A lot of players, when they hold the racket, the hands are kind of together in what I call this block formation. You can see how I'm holding the racket like this, and I'm holding the racket like this with the fingers together. And so if I were to hit a backhand right now, it would be a lot stiffer if I swing with my hands together like this. So what we've got to do is we've got to spread those fingers out a little bit, because when you do that, you have more feel in your hand. As soon as you spread those index fingers, you have more feel in your hand, and that's what we want. So I'm going to hit a backhand right now with those index fingers spread, and I have a lot more feel in my grip. Let's take this deeper with the two-handed backhand grip. And what I want to go over now is the relationship between the hands. Now, ideally, you want to have the hands fairly close together. There could be a little bit of space, but because you have the index fingers spread, there might be a little bit of space between the hands. You don't want them really scrunched together. Now, I know some players that do that, and they have great two-handed backhands, but I think, again, that is the exception rather than the rule. As long as those index fingers are spread, you're going to have a little bit of space between the hands. Now, also know that some great top players, David Ferrer, for example, they actually have their hands spread like this on the two-handed backhand, which is very unorthodox, but just know it can work for you. And when they do that, they're using their top hand a lot to control their two-handed backhand. So if you're one of these players that likes to use your top hand, you might want to spread the hands a little bit for control. But again, it's not the ideal choice for me. If I'm your coach and I'm helping you, I want those hands closer together. Now, the last thing I want to point out is that you want to make sure that you have the heel of the hand off of the racket. Why would you do that? It's going to give you more feel and more power. You're going to be able to use the top hand like an opposite hand forehand, and you're going to be able to use the racket and have more leverage with the racket to gain more power. As soon as you start choking up, now you move into that world of having control on your backhand rather than power. So ideally, we want the bottom hand, heel of the hand off of the racket in that continental grip, and then we want that Eastern grip with the Eastern forehand grip with the top hand, and then we're going to make sure that the hands are fairly close together, and that's the ideal grip that you want to have on your two-handed backhand.